We've been talking about the Progressive Era, the time when reformers reshaped America. And if you want to know what courage looked like, or looks like, look no further than Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells was one of the loudest, bravest voices of the Progressive Era, and one the country tried very hard to silence. She didn't just demand change, she exposed America's ugliest truths and forced the country to look inward. She was born enslaved in Mississippi in 1862, just months before the Emancipation Proclamation. She was freed as a child by the Civil War, but not freed from the racism that defined her world. By 22, she was already staging her own act of resistance. Ida had bought a first-class train ticket from Memphis to Nashville, but when conductors demanded she move to the segregated car, she refused and fought back, literally biting the conductor who tried to remove her. They dragged her out, physically forcing her off the train. She then turned around and sued the railroad and won. Briefly, the Tennessee Supreme Court overturned that decision and sent a clear message that the law wasn't made to protect people like her. But Ida's fight wasn't over. She became a teacher and then a journalist, and with her pen, she exposed the brutal reality white newspapers ignored: lynching. After her friends Thomas Moss, Calvin McDowell, and Henry Stewart were lynched in Memphis for daring to run a successful black grocery store that competed with a white-owned one, Ida investigated. But she didn't just tell the story. She printed the names of the men responsible, the police who looked away, and the businesses tied to that mob. She turned her newspaper, Free Speech, into a weapon against the system, showing the world that lynching wasn't about protecting women or law and order as the South claimed, but as terrorism meant to control and silence black communities. The backlash was immediate. Her printing press was destroyed, and death threats forced her to flee Memphis. But instead of going quiet, she went louder, publishing Southern Horrors and The Red Record, some of the first works to document the scale of racial terror in America. Ida even traveled to Britain to rally international outrage against lynching, simultaneously embarrassing America on the world stage for its hypocrisy. Now, unfortunately, it wasn't just racism she faced, but sexism too, sometimes from the very movements she helped build. In the suffrage parades, white women tried to push her to the back because of her race. She, of course, refused and marched exactly where she belonged, in the front. And within the civil rights circles, male leaders tried to sideline her. Wells was a founding member of the NAACP, but her uncompromising stance on anti-lynching made colleagues like W.E.B. Du Bois uneasy. Later, when Du Bois published a list of founders in the NAACP's magazine, her name was conspicuously missing. She was excluded from the organization's inner circles, pushed aside in favor of leaders who were less confrontational. In other words, she wasn't silenced by her enemies alone. She was silenced by those who claimed to fight for the same justice she did. Still, she kept going. Investigative journalist, suffragist, anti-lynching crusader, and civil rights organizer, Ida B. Wells carried more fights on her shoulders than most movements had in an entire generation. Ida B. Wells turned truth into a weapon, and courage into a legacy. In the Progressive Era, she stood where it was hardest to stand, and forced a reckoning this country couldn't ignore.